You know, when I was in school, my parents would go in to meet the teacher night, or they would go in for a parent-teacher conference. And now parents are talking to our teachers every single day, and they're learning things like, you know, about class assignments, and here's a sample question. And one of the ways that we do that is through the use of Remind.
So the way I explain it to parents as they come in is, hey guys, thanks for joining our school. I'm so glad you're here. Communication is so important because we want you to be a part of what we do here each and every day. So we have a Remind system. That way you have direct communication with me as the principal, and you can sign up for your teacher's own Remind account.
The teacher's able to send announcements, newsletters. They can send pictures of the kids doing activities throughout the day.
My son's a little bit older, and so for him, I get messages like, don't forget to study for your vocabulary test in social studies or things like that, which is great because he doesn't tell me anything.
I like being able to share the fun stuff, being able to share those little things, but you have the time to do it because you can send one remind and it goes out to all 24 of your parents.
We're going to be talking with Taylor Chapman from Remind. Taylor, welcome to the program. And you told me that you were initially a teacher in the classroom. So before we get into Remind, tell us about your teaching experience.
I was a teacher in public schools for 4 years, 2 years in Charlotte, North Carolina at a high poverty public school out near the airport, and then 2 years at a public school in Kumamoto, Japan. And that's on the island of Kyushu, way down south towards Korea. So obviously those are two very different experiences for one another with a whole different set of challenges in each one. But it taught me a lot about schools and how really, in many ways, kids are the same everywhere. But they were both great experiences.
You mentioned basically kids are the same everywhere. What other similarities did you discover?
Well, one is kids will be kids wherever you are, right? So there's always going to be some troublemakers. There's always going to be some flirting, some shy kids, the class clown. So that holds universal across cultures. It also taught me the importance of building relationships, which is part of why I'm so excited to be part of Remind, because I think it's a tool that really enables teachers and administrators to build much, much stronger relationships with parents and with students. Because I can tell you that a lot of the teaching experiences in both places that I consider most successful were due to the relationship that I developed with a particular student and their family.
Can you give us some examples and tell us a little bit more about those relationships that you established with your students?
Sure. So Shatara was a girl that I taught at Harding University High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And she was just super sweet, super smart, hardworking. And it took a while to get to know her because she was quiet, but it was clear that she was really bright. And I really enjoyed sort of mentoring her and trying to encourage her to really fully realize her potential. And then the coolest thing happened, which was maybe 6-7 years after that. I heard from Shatara that she had actually, she'd finished college, and she was actually now a Spanish teacher, just like I had been at the exact same school where I had once taught her. So it was a really cool experience to see something like that come full circle. And I think a big part of it was I took the time to get to know Shatara and to really encourage her to be her best self.
What were some of the benefits that you saw in taking the time to really know your students and form some sort of connection with them?
So it can be everything from behavior to academic performance. So obviously, a child who feels positively towards you is more likely to be better behaved in class, not causing disruptions that detract from the learning of their fellow students. In many cases, it goes beyond that. They're going to make a little more effort to study harder, put in a bit more effort on a long-term project or a group endeavor that ultimately is going to result in better learning outcomes for themselves in the longer term. So it's not just about having a more orderly classroom, but it's also about helping those kids achieve their full academic potential.
I know many teachers will agree with me when I say one of the keys to successful relationships with both our students and our parents is communication. So tell me about Remind. What is it?
Well, it's super simple. It's just a free and safe way to instantly text message students and parents. teacher has Remind either on their phone or their computer. You can access it on either one. And they can, with a single click, text message their entire class of students or parents or both. And it doesn't come from their phone number, so it helps by never revealing the private contact information. I've talked to a lot of teachers who have at some point had a negative experience with a particularly upset parent or a parent maybe who's having issues in their life, and having their private contact information has actually become a liability for them. So Remind, one of the reasons it was built was to allow teachers to have the easiness and the functionality of a text message, but without having to compromise their privacy or their personal time with their families on nights and weekends. It works on any kind of device. So unlike something like, a WhatsApp, nobody has to download an app or create an account on the parent or student side.
We as teachers, we have so many resources for parents and students to find out what's going on, whether it's newsletters, homework pages on websites, writing things down in students' agenda. Why even bother using Remind?
Two things. One, we all know that students lose those flyers and notebooks all the time, and then we get to hear excuses. So this removes any excuse that a student might have because it's being pushed directly to their phone. Two, it actually is easier for the parents to see it because it's coming to them as well if you set it up that way. And third, I would say, Remind is about much more than homework, right? So a lot of what teachers are using Remind for goes beyond assignments. It'll be everything from reminding parents to bring in a permission slip and an actual nudge, right? A website is not a great reminder resource. It's something that parents have to pull from. They have to be proactive on the internet, seeking out your website for it to be of any use. And let's be honest, most parents don't do that, at least not very often.
Agreed.
So this way you can push out the information to them, so it's right there in front of you. For example, I talked to a school in Brooklyn the other day that had started texting parents to come out to PTA nights, and they'd tried everything. They'd been sending flyers home with students. They had it on the website. They were emailing, and turnout was just miserably low. You'd have 10 parents show up. And they started texting the parents, and now they've routinely got over 30. So you've got more than tripled attendance because you're able to text these parents. And last, it can be used in some really creative ways that really help build those relationships you and I were talking about. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a teacher I was talking to the other day who sends home, quote unquote, dinner table questions. So she'll say things like, hey parents, today we learned about volcanoes. Ask your child the difference between lava and magma. And so that, it's not an assignment, it's not a reminder about anything specifically, but what that does, it allows the parent and the child to have a great conversation at home about what was learned in school. The parent now feels more connected to what's going on in the classroom and is going to have a much more positive attitude about school, which is no longer a scary black box where they send their precious child for 8 hours a day. It's now a place that she has a window into. It also means that that child is now reteaching that information to someone else, which, and the data is really clear on this, that's one of the best ways to get a child to retain a piece of knowledge or information is for them to reteach it to someone else. Remind also lets you text out photos. And so a lot of teachers will just snap a photo on their phone in the moment of kids doing something really great, whether it's a class project, an activity, a field trip, and they can just snap it, send it instantly as a text, and parents love getting those images of, their children hard at work and succeeding at school. So it's an exercise in community building and positive relationships, and it's proactive communication in a way that is not true of something like a flyer or a website.
Agreed. I found out through my career that most parents aren't checking agendas. They aren't going to the website. Emails, another thing in their inbox, which they may or may not get to. flyers, information that needs to go home, may be lost, but they are checking their phones. Students are checking their phones, and just a brief text message saying, hey, don't forget you have this project due on this date, it works wonders. And I've really had so much great feedback from parents and from students.
Yeah, we have a big wave of signups every back to school year, and teachers are realizing that it not only helps them with their parents and students, it also saves them time compared to managing, all the flyers and phone calls home and websites. So it's a quicker alternative in many cases.
I know another struggle that many of my listeners may be facing is language barriers, in particular with parents who don't speak English or very little English. One of the great things about Remind that you guys have recently added is a language translator that can take what you send and translate it into that parent's language. Very exciting.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite of all the features. There are now over 70 languages available on Remind for automatic translation. And we've just gotten overwhelmingly positive information on that. And in most public schools, there is a significant population served of families whose first language is not English. In many cases, it's up to half of families. So it's very important to be able to reach those families in their own language.
It's also simple and easy to use, especially if you're technology challenged or if a parent is.
Yeah, I think the best description I've heard is from a teacher just saying anyone who can send a text message can use Remind. It does not come with a manual because you don't need one. You literally download the app, you create a class, and then you message it. So it's super, super simple. You just tap on the Remind icon on your phone, write a message, click send.
Give us an example of how Remind has been successfully used.
I thought a particularly powerful one was someone I talked to in Newark, New Jersey a while back, and she teaches high school, and she had one student who was just not on top of his work. He would sleep in class. It was really hard to get him motivated. And so, of course, he was not doing well. He was failing the class. And the mother, when she was able to reach her, was really concerned and wanted to work on this. And so when she could reach this mom, the mother would help the kid get back on track. It was hard to reach the mom. She worked multiple jobs. She couldn't always pick up the phone. Then the teacher started using Remind, and she was able to text message the parent. And suddenly the woman was replying instantaneously. So anytime that there was an issue with the child in class, they were missing homework, they were late, they slept in class, she was now able to let the mother know per her request that this was happening, and now their grade has increased by 2 full letter grades just by getting the parent more involved.
So listeners, as you can see, this goes way beyond sending text messages from your phone. There's so much to Remind, so I encourage you to go check out the website at remind.com. I've been using them for years, and Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on the program. I'm excited for our listeners to use you guys because I know I've seen great success with Remind.